are live. Hello and welcome to the Dr. Elisa Show here on KUHS Denver, the stream. Thank you for joining me today. I do hope you're doing well wherever you are. Denver has moved into fall, and I must say, even though I love summer, I could never leave Colorado in the fall. The sky is a different kind of blue. It's cold enough in the morning for a sweatshirt and warm enough in the afternoon for sandals and a tank top. And I, on some level, wish it could be fall forever. But I'm going to enjoy it while we have it. In case you are joining me for the first time, welcome. The tagline for this show is Inspiring a Renaissance of Spirit. And my goal is to absolutely do that. If you listen for an hour, which you absolutely should because I have an amazing guest, you should leave, I hope, with maybe new questions. Not answers, but questions. A little bit higher energetically, just feeling a little inspired. Maybe feeling like there's a different way to look at the world. That's what this show is about. So thank you so much for joining me. If you've joined me before, you know I have a goal that every single one of us will be a philanthropist by the end of the year. You still have time. That could mean donating $5 a month. Pick your favorite cause, your favorite charity, maybe your favorite person, and realize that every small donation makes you a philanthropist. Nonprofits run on small donations. This year, and you could still do this if you want, I'm supporting the MS Society, and I did a hike for MS, and if you want, you can go to my website and you can find there the link on my Facebook site to donate to MS. But pick your own charity, because being a philanthropist really changes how you feel. You don't have to give millions or hundreds, you just have to give. And if you don't have money, you can do time. You're still a philanthropist. So, a couple things about me. I know you're probably tired of hearing this, but you can get my first book, The Way of the Well, on Amazon.com and actually everywhere books are sold. It's a spiritual romance and a spiritual adventure, and I think it has some amazing lessons in it for people, especially in this time. I also want you to know that this is an interesting time. Last time I was on the air, I talked to you about it being the Jewish holy days, where we do teshuvah, and we apologize to anyone we might have wounded. I apologized on the air, I've apologized on Facebook. I didn't hear back from anyone, which I think is a good thing. And now I'm moving from that to this time of sort of trust and openness. We're in the holiday of Sukkot, where we sit outside in a hut, 3 walls, branches for a roof, where we trust that we have enough and that we're going to be blessed because we have enough, and we're going to show that trust. So I'm going to try to segue from that, because one of the blessings that I have in my life is my guest who's with me today, Joanne Greenberg. Joanne, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
My pleasure. I'm fine.
You're feeling good?
Thanks to you, yes.
So, as you know, I don't do long intros for people, but let me just tell you a little about Joanne. I met her at synagogue. I was introduced to her. I knew who she was by her writing career, and then by some gift of whatever, the angels or God or whatever, we connected, and I have the incredible blessing of studying with her almost every week, under the guise of studying Hebrew, which we get to eventually.
Oh, yeah.
But really a bit of philosophy. Yeah. And this isn't what we're going to talk about, but I want to tell you, Joanne, that I did not know that languages taught philosophy until I studied Hebrew with you.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they do.
Right, which is a
way of looking at the world.
And we're gonna get to that. But what I'd love to have you do, you've inspired me for years now. What I'd love to have you do is just talk about. So let me do this. You're a linguist. You're an anthropologist. You're a trained EMT. You've you are an author. What can you tell us a bit about the beginning of your journey, maybe in the writing area, like where you, I don't know, where your passion for writing started? Could you start us there?
Well, I'm starting with, well, I know where it started. I was 9 years old.
Okay.
And I wrote something, and actually it was an open, don't start small, it was an open letter to Hitler. I knew he would read it right away.
Absolutely, it came from you.
And it felt right. I got this off my chest. I told Hitler what I thought of him, and it was pleasing. It was empowering to do that. I didn't get really serious about it until I was 11. And when I was 21, I wrote. When I was 11, I was on a honeymoon
with writing.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I wrote everything. I wrote poems, plays, all kinds of stuff, comments, and years later, and somebody said to my mother, "How did you encourage Joanne?" She said, "You don't encourage Niagara Falls."
So this was just flowing out of you from as a child.
But when I was 21, I thought, now this is after having been since 11 on.
Right.
You know, this could be a lifetime thing. I could do this for a whole lifetime. If they'd let me do it, I could do it.
Right.
And they did, and I did.
So wait, who's the they? They let you do it?
They, you know, the they.
The they, they hang out in the world, okay.
They, yeah.
And you've done it, but you not only, like I write, but nobody reads it. You are a best-selling author.
Well, it was never best-selling. It was always long and slow. It was never, people say that. I wrote a book called The King's Person.
This was your first book, right?
And that answered the question, could I write history and make it real?
Okay.
And that was the first book. I had written, in college, I had written a paper called Across the Coin and the Yellow Wheel.
Across the Coin and the Yellow Wheel.
Which was about the York Massacre.
So I remember reading that, like 1190. Is that right? The year 1190.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a massacre. And I looked over it and I thought, the Second World War, which was my war.
Right. You caused it?
Well, I caused it and I cured it.
Because you wrote to Hitler, so you
I wrote to Hitler, but also, and I think this is a key thing. When we went to war, all of us went to war. I don't like the modern wars, because 1/10 of 1% of us are involved in the war, and the rest of us are going on. That was a mistake Lyndon Johnson made. That he said you could have your life and the world and everything, and we would have this war someplace else. Don't worry about it.
Oh,
but
World
we
War
were
II,
in
everyone
the
was
war.
in it.
I was in the war.
Right.
We had meatless Tuesday, meatless Thursday. We had rations, gas, all kinds of stuff. But the kids were in the war.
Right.
I collected foil. We collected fat. We collected fat, and on the radio they used to say, "Ladies, bring your fat cans down to the."
Okay, back to writing.
Back to writing.
So in 1190,
Yeah.
there's a massacre
Yeah.
in York,
Yes.
and you're in college,
Yes.
and somebody says, write a research paper about this, and you write a novel.
Yeah. Well, no, I wrote the research paper, and then I always felt there was more to do, and I got out of college, and actually I never graduated. because I never had a ceremony because I was married and in Italy where my husband Albert had been in the army.
Okay.
So we fought the Second World War again in Italy and stayed where he stayed and so forth. And I came back and I said, somebody ought to. And finally he said, will you quit with the somebody ought to and get on it, go do it. So he was the one who said, go do it. Well, I was in Colorado in a little cabin on what was then the country. It's now evergreen.
Right. The far away mountain place at the end of I-70. Right.
There was no I-70.
Oh, this is before I-70.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get to Evergreen?
8 hard miles.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We were out here and in a little cabin, and I went to Colorado School of Mines, and I talked to the librarian, and she said, "Oh, I would love to help you. I'm so tired of doing all this geology stuff. I'd love to get with you." And she got me through interlibrary loan everything I needed. I wrote to the city of York. I wrote. I got stuff in Latin and
oh my gosh,
from all over, from rubbings on the walls of the cathedrals, everything, things shipped to me from Harvard and Yale. So and this was of course before all of you guys's
internet.
There's
no internet.
No,
right. There's barely mail that is reliable.
Barely mail, and we had a in the telephone we had 3 or 4 other people, so I did all of that research and I wrote this book. I was dumb as a barrel of hair. I'll tell you. I wrote this manuscript. I was in New York. My parents came from New York, and I was back visiting them, and I looked in the telephone book, and the biggest ad was Simon and Schuster.
Okay.
Let's go over to Simon and Schuster and get this taken care of right away.
They're going to publish my book.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I show up in the office.
Right.
The lady said, "Well, do you have an appointment?" "No, I just got this book." "Wonderful. The very thing we do." Dim bulb.
She rolls her eyes at you.
She rolls her eyes at me, and she said, "I don't know what to do with you." All right, so I'm just sitting. She said, "Well, I've got the office is going to close, and you're going to still be sitting here like seaweed on a clam. So I'm going to do something."
Right.
So out comes this guy. Now, he was Robert Gottlieb, but he didn't know he was Robert Gottlieb.
He wasn't like Robert Gottlieb.
No.
He was just like starting out to be
this guy,
right,
who was the chaperone and bunny mother to almost every writer in the 50s.
Wow.
I mean, this guy was hot and wonderful. But nobody knew it yet, including himself. He said, "Well, okay, I'll read it over the weekend and see what I think.
Okay.
Come back on Monday." So I came back on Monday, and he said, "Are you writing a scholarly treatise or you want to write a novel?" "Well, I think I want to write a novel." He said, "Okay, you've got 100 main characters. You have to do something right away about that.
You need to kill some people off here right now.
Well,
just like they never show up.
Rewrite it."
Yeah, rewrite it.
"Okay, and come back later." So
Okay.
I did that, and he said, "You did terrific. Do it again." And I did it again.
Okay.
That was year 3.
Okay.
And then he said, "I think this is publishable, and I want to get you an agent." And I said, "Well, I heard about agents, and that I don't think we want an agent." And he said, take a cab home because you're too stupid to walk in the street.
You need an agent.
You
need
an
an
agent.
agent.
Do
Okay.
me a favor. I'm going to get you an agent. Don't misuse the agent. Okay. Well, he got me this wonderful, lovely lady. We went through eight publishers.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the great joys of having this agent was that every time we got rejected, she would say, so much the worse for them. They'll be sorry.
Wow.
And finally, we got a publisher, and that was the beginning. But that world was so much different from the world there is now.
Really?
Oh my God. It's so different as to be an entirely different thing. It's a wonder they still speak English.
Because so many people self-publish now, because books they're on tape, and they're on audio, and they're on Kindle, and they're because
There's
of
that.
Okay, that part.
But
Okay.
more basic than that.
Right.
I was in New York. They said, come to New York. And again, I didn't know from nothing.
Right.
Agent said, I'll take you around. We went to the publishers. Here's your marketing person. Here's your library person.
Oh my gosh.
Here's the person who's going to handle your intercommunication with other publishers or with other people. Here's your editor. They don't have editors anymore.
No, you have to hire one outside.
Yeah. This is your editor. And the agent said, be nice to these people. These are the waters you'll be swimming in.
Right.
Well, there are no waters anymore.
Wow.
Because I know who it is, and I shouldn't say it.
Right. You can say it. Right.
Jacqueline Suzanne. She
ruined it?
She wrecked it, top to bottom, side to side. She was a great marketer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stunning.
Mm-hmm.
And she had all these tricks that she would use to
Mm-hmm.
get people to read it and to get it into
Mm-hmm.
stores, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the publisher said, gee, these writers have so much personal vanity that they'll do anything, and we why are we hiring marketing people? Why are we hiring PR people? The writers will do it themselves. Well, it stinks.
Because now you have to do it yourself.
Now we have to do it ourselves, and I'm too old and ill and sick and stupid to do all that stuff. So, either you hire somebody,
right,
or you're in a sea of other writers and other times and other places, and you have to be on internet and Facebook and Twitter and Flitter and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And so and there's so much noise.
And there's so much noise.
Right.
Yes.
So we'll come back to it maybe, but let's go back in time. So you get the first book published.
Yes.
Okay, which I read and loved. And
Thank
then
you.
and then though I didn't read it first. First I read I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. Okay, so if you've just tuned in, this is the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, the Stream. And my guest is Joanne Greenberg, who's a dear friend and mentor and an amazing author. Google her. And a book will come up that if you have not read, you absolutely need to. It is called I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. You may know that there was a country western song, I think. There was a movie, but you just forget all that and read the book. So it's been translated into how many languages?
Oh, gee, quite a few.
Quite a few languages, and it's going to be re-released?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a semi-autobiographical book.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about it a little?
Sure.
Okay.
The first problem was, could I write history believably? And the second problem was, could I write personal experience in such a way that people will understand it?
Okay.
So I had been close to 3 years in a mental hospital, suffering from what was diagnosed as schizophrenia. The hospital featured psychotherapy rather than in fact, there were no drugs.
Oh yeah, there were no drugs.
You had to do it on your own.
Right.
Thorazine came out later, somewhat later than I. They had electroshock. They had shock therapy, and they had electric shock, and they had chemical shock, insulin shock, metrazole shock, curare.
Okay, I don't know that one, but it doesn't sound good.
No. And I was in the hospital with a whole bunch of veterans of all these shocks where they didn't work. I didn't have it. So I've had to fight ever since with my understanding of what this ailment sort of is. Could I explain that in some way to make people understand what I think this is? That's really all I wanted to do. The book came out, and of course the publisher wanted to say, by the writer of King's Persons,
Right.
because King's Persons had won an award,
Right.
and that's what publishers do on the strength of this. But I had to take another name. My husband worked as a psychotherapist, and one time I had invited people up for dinner, and so I said to them, all of his co-workers, this schizophrenia thing, is it curable? And by the way, nobody knew about this.
Right.
And they said no.
By definition, right? So by
definition,
we define schizophrenia as something we cannot cure.
progressive and incurable.
Right.
Well, who wants to be
Progressive and incurable. Absolutely.
So I said, well, but what about this? Well, you could have, what's the word I'm looking for? A long period, and then all of a sudden
You could go into remission.
Remission.
Okay.
You're fine until somebody mentions shoelaces or Thursday, and then you're off again. I didn't want that weight, and we had family members who didn't know exactly where I had been.
So it's interesting because nowadays mental illness is a conversation. But back then it was a curse.
Oh, the stigma was
stigma.
Incredible.
Right. So you published under a different name,
Yes,
Hannah Green.
It was as close to my name as you could get.
Right.
Unfortunately, there was another Hannah Green.
Right.
And she got tagged with hers, and I got tagged with mine. It was a big confusion between us. And that's still, by the way, even to this day, 2 years ago, we looked up my name in Google, and they said, Wikipedia, and they said I was dead. But I'm not really.
I'm so sad to hear that. You seem to be doing pretty
good,
well.
Yes. So we had to, tell them, no, that's a whole nother person.
That was the other person.
That was the other person. Nice lady.
Nice lady.
I met her,
Right. So
I wrote her a book, and I wrote her a letter, and I said, it's okay. There's not going to be Son of Rose Garden, Bride of Rose Garden, Revenge of Rose Garden.
I'm done. I'm done with Rose Gardens.
I'm done, yeah.
So you go, and this is like groundbreaking, right? You're diagnosed with this. You have psychotherapy with this woman who is groundbreaking, and you're fine. I mean, you sort of. So you have that. Did you write through all of that time? Was writing part of your personal therapy through
No, there were 2 or 3 years when I didn't. I was just too sick to do it.
And then what happened when you started to write again?
Well, by that time, I had to have a GED because I was 16 when I went in, and I had my GED, and I had tutoring for the GED, and then I got into college, and then I was writing papers and doing all that stuff.
And then we have the King's Persons.
Then we have the King's Person.
Okay. So we've got those two books. I want to talk about how you write, or about a little bit about what you write, okay? So let's go back to in the beginning I said that studying Hebrew with you, because you're a linguist, I did not know that language taught philosophy. You see the world through this lens of being an anthropologist and a linguist. And it shows up in your writing, your view of the world. Are you very conscious of that? Do you do you know that you see the world that way?
No.
So talk to me about how those elements play out in your writing. How does being an anthropologist and a linguist play out in your writing?
I was in college, English major.
Okay.
Standard thing. I walked into a classroom, something you have to, I think it was an elective and I didn't want to take. By the way, I flunked physics. I flunked statistics.
There are people listening right now who love you because you just said that.
But I walked into this class and here was this guy talking about everything I'd ever wondered about.
Wow.
And it had a name, anthropology. And I was interested in language always. And there's right there in anthropology is something called ethnolinguistics. Oh boy. So you get to study Umbundu,
okay,
which is a kind of an African language associated with what's the big? I'm also a phasic. Swahili. And that's a way of looking at things.
Okay.
It's a tough language. A lot of African languages are so different from what English is.
Right.
I spent some time in Navajo country, trying desperately to learn some Navajo, but Navajo is so very different from English. There are languages that do not have what we call nouns, that are here. A noun is the name of something, where you could have prefixes, suffixes, infixes, that is a whole other word, depending on who is talking to whom. Japanese, for example. You can't speak Japanese unless you know who you're speaking to.
So they're very relational languages.
Relational languages and languages that have class differences and gender differences.
Interesting.
Hebrew is partly that way.
Hebrew is partly that way.
Yes.
So language and anthropology go together. When you write, so here's what I sort of love. You see the world in this sort of literary, creative way, and you explore in all of your books why. Why do people do what they do?
Yeah.
And you may create a situation and then play that out, right?
Yes, that's the way it is.
Is that the way it is?
That's the way it is. What would happen if? What would happen? There's a story that I wrote. And by the way, I have to start. All of this is fun. The whole thing starts in fun.
Okay.
What would a lot of people I know say they don't believe in God.
Okay.
Okay, fine. What would happen if you kept on with that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in gravity. And if you really don't believe
we could Google that. I bet you there's people right now who are saying, no, I don't believe in gravity. Right.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when you try and make a bed? You go up with the sheet.
And it just keeps going.
It keeps going. What would that be like?
So it's interesting because your books are pretty serious, mostly. I mean, there's a few that are, but you start very playful with them, which is the fun of it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. You get yourself into a hole and try and work your way out of it.
Okay.
What's this lady? What's this lady who is a high fashion fashionista doing in a one-horse town?
Okay.
Well, I've got to figure it out. Get me away that she's there.
So one of the things you've said to me is that you have to go be that character for a while. So you have one of your stories, and it's a short story. It's a woman. She's died. The ghost is talking, and she's this upstanding, perfect citizen in a bank. But she's actually a thief.
Oh yeah.
She's actually a thief. So did you go to a bank and learn to be a banker, a teller? Did you learn? How do you learn to be a thief in a bank?
That story is a lovely story.
I love that story.
Okay. In the paper, there's always some story about sweet little Grandma B, whom everybody loves, who it turns out has escaped with or gotten away with $3 million or whatever.
From the bank, and she's in Tahiti living somewhere.
Lovely. Okay, what about that? Well, of course, you have to know what. This is another big thing. You get to do a lot of research, most of which you won't use, but it puts you there so that you can be there comfortably. So I studied for almost 3 years with a maxillofacial surgeon.
Oh.
So that I could be a maxillofacial surgeon comfortably.
Writing a book. In one of your stories.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm a ski lawyer, maxillofacial surgeon, farmer, rancher, and now banker. So I went to the bank, made an appointment with the vice president, and I said, I'm writing this book, and I know absolutely zippo about what you do. You come into the office and that's it.
Right.
Oh no, she said, we'll do this and do this. Oh, what is this book you're writing? Well, I'm writing about this lady who's taken off with a lot of money.
She's absconded with the money from the bank.
With the money from the bank. She went off like a nickel rocket. I could tell you things. It's only because I would be afraid of getting arrested that I don't do it myself.
Oh my gosh.
I could, and she's wide open.
Wow.
And do it. And this account, and I could take from this account and put in that account, and I'm writing with everything I can, and it was just lovely.
So this is part of the fun. You go.
That's part of the fun.
So what's interesting is in some book on how to write, they say write what you know. You're like, yeah, but I'm going to go know it. I'm going to go learn it. That's part of the
I'd rather
fun.
say don't write what you don't know.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, I think so, because write what you know. And here's another thing we're coming against that I'm not crazy about. The so-called cultural appropriation.
I like how we're on the same wavelength there. That's very effective.
We better be, because I'm so effacing. It would take me 45 minutes to figure out the word I want. That there was a lady who was tried to they tried to stop her from doing this because she wasn't black or she wasn't
person of color, American
else.
or something.
Yeah. That's really terrible, because it means that what it's saying is that the only imagination you can have is the imagination of everything you've grown up with.
Oh, and that's history.
Yeah.
That's memory, but it's not imagination.
It's a ghetto.
So we can be caught in the ghetto of our own history.
Yeah.
If we only rely on memory, if
Yeah.
we don't open it up, right, to being able to learn different things, be different people.
This is part of what I've been fighting. It's true that I can never be a Vietnam War veteran.
Right.
But what I can do is to try very hard, sifting out all the crap,
Mm-hmm.
to go into the place of, which I think is interesting in writing. You would not say, what does a mother feel like? What does a mother do?
Right.
It's better to say, what would I do if I were a mother?
Okay.
And that includes a lot of stuff that's not so positive.
Right.
You have this idea about mother. A mother should
Right,
blah, blah,
right.
blah. But is that true? Well, I've been a mother. I still am.
You still are.
And it's not always all that sweet. There are times when I could be very, very understanding of a mother who murdered her kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some times when they drive you right to the edge.
And so we don't talk about that.
No, we don't.
We don't talk about the level of stress. You know, I've been thinking about that, and I don't want to go all the way down that rabbit hole, but COVID, homeschooling, holding a full-time job, all of it within this house, and we know that women picked up 70% of the homeschooling while holding full-time jobs, on and on and on, and many of them went back 20 years in terms of C-suite office space, or in terms of job title or income, right? And then we have an expectation that she's a great mom. She's always sweet and kind and bakes cookies, right? I mean, it's an interesting.
Yes.
So I don't want to go too far down that, because you'll have to come back to the show. If you're tuning in, my guest is Joanne Greenberg. This is the Dr. Elisa show on KUHS Denver, the stream. You know, if you have a question for Joanne, if you'd like to comment, you can go to Facebook. I actually have it open here. And go to the Dr. Elisa show on Facebook, and you will see us chatting. And you could put a question or a comment in there, or you could just put a little heart and let us know that you love the fact that her comments on statistics and physics and that they don't actually determine one's positive future unless you want to be an engineer. I can tell you that stats was hard for me, and physics was hard. I got through both of them, and they are not what made me successful in my life, right? So but there's other classes like philosophy that I was horrid in, that I just flunked right out because I couldn't figure this class out.
Well, my statistics teacher, professor, called me in. This is a little point I'd like to make here.
Okay, you have a microphone.
He called me in and he said, "This is not your fault.
Okay.
I see you struggling."
Right.
And I learned a lot in that statistics class, but not what he wanted me to learn, apparently.
Okay.
And he said, "I see you trying. It's not, you're just a moron." In those days, it was not the only time they said that about me.
Right.
Because I went to business college, and they wouldn't teach me shorthand because they said I was a moron. Okay. If people call you a moron and you don't think you are, don't listen to them.
Don't listen to them.
Don't pay attention to that.
Right.
I didn't. And I've had people say, well, you know, you should always encourage people. Yes, you should.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody says you're a moron and you don't think you are,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to go there.
And if there's something you're not good at, then okay, maybe that's not your path.
But that's a better thing because I taught at Mines also,
Right.
25 lovely, happy
Mhm.
years, the best students ever.
School of Mines.
Oh my God, they're good.
And you taught anthropology,
Yes, I did.
right?
Yeah.
So I love this sort. So this is the college that lives on the foundation of physics and calc and stats,
Yes.
and lives on the foundation of everything you weren't good at,
Yeah,
right? And you teach there
yeah,
the thing that nobody there knows,
yeah,
right? The engineers, the geologists, my first degrees are in geology, right? The stuff that nobody knows. You show up and teach anthropology.
Well, they're
There.
going all over the world, these
Right.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And where they're going to crap up, which is what I tell them, but I don't say crap up usually.
Okay.
Where they crap up is not in drilling or petroleum. Where they crap up is in their interaction with the people there.
Right.
So isn't it good to have anthropology so that you
You know
don't
that
do
people.
that? Yeah.
So I'm going to segue from there, because otherwise we're just going to talk forever.
Yeah,
And
that's all
because
right.
what I want to do is talk about this book. So if you're watching us live, the book is Jubilee Year. It's amazing, and it's your most recent book.
Yeah.
It came out in 2019, maybe?
I think so.
I think so. I think that's when I
Wait a
read
minute,
it.
Let's
You gonna
find
look?
out.
You
Yeah,
gonna
I'm
find
gonna
out.
look.
It's called Jubilee Year. It's available everywhere books are sold. It's under her name.
Yeah,
Joanne
2019.
2019. And the reason I want to go from anthropology to this book, I'm going to do the really quick synopsis. It's a small town, somewhere in the mountains. It's at the end of a long road. There's one way in and one way out. And there's a landslide, and then the top of a mountain basically comes off and buries the road. And the people in the town are now cut off from not just technology, well, all technology, electricity,
Yeah,
everything, right? They're just cut off. They have water because they have wells,
yeah.
and they can pump, but they don't have electricity, so no cell phones, no computers, no internet, nothing. And they eventually attract the attention. People are worried about the town, and a helicopter comes in on a regular basis, and their entire lives now, they are back in time, basically, and they are cut off.
But they have food.
They have
the
food.
basics of life.
Right, and the helicopter brings in some things they need, and news,
Yeah,
right, and they can ask for stuff. But as far as they know, the outside world is in some sort of trauma,
yeah,
and nobody's around to clear the road. Okay,
yeah.
and this is a study of an event, and then what happens. And some people heal, some people their best shows up, and then there's the other people
Yeah.
that their best doesn't show up. So you started with an event, and then said, why do people do what they do? What was the meat that you were going for in this book?
Well, the motive force of this was wondering, you know, we don't really realize how dependent we are
Mm-hmm.
on things like TV or electricity
Mhm.
or
Running water.
running water. I don't even mean that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean the drugs, alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
weed,
Mm-hmm.
psychotropic medication. 1/3 of all of the drugs on my list for insurance are psychotropic meds.
Wow.
What if all of that was gone? What happens? Smoking, the tobacco.
Because they don't have cigarettes.
No.
There's a woman in there who's been on medication for a mental
Yeah.
disorder. No more meds.
No more meds.
No more meds. Wow.
So what happens? Just because we forget, I think, and I have this experience because we lived in the country where
Right.
there'd be outages,
Mm-hmm.
that it lasts a couple of days. Now our outages last a couple of hours, and it's no big deal. But I did have women call me from our road and say, "The electricity's out. The electricity's out." Yeah, well, you got a fireplace, you got wood.
You got books.
Take your pot and put it on this close there, and you have lunch, you know. And we have all kinds of stuff. Sterno, get yourself some sterno right away.
This is Colorado. I have a camping.
This is Colorado. But we do depend on these things for to smooth our feathers.
Because I'm comfortable. I know that I lived in a house with a well, and the well went out for a week, and so a week with no water, right? And going somewhere else to shower, and I get that sense of how ruffled I feel through that, right?
Well, what happens?
Right.
So then I get to play with that, and you were right before when you said that you have to inhabit them. You're not. It's a very lovely combination of being outside and inside. You have to be outside enough to look at it and write it, and inside enough to feel it.
So that the character, you're part of the character, but you're part of the narrator watching the character, and that's how your characters come alive.
Yeah.
So do you do that with every character in the book?
Yeah.
So you're the young boy who's finds, is misbehaving. You're the young boy who's getting better. You're the woman who can't get her drugs and is talking to someone and getting better.
Yeah.
You're part of everybody.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that confusing?
No, it's just fun.
The whole thing is just fun because you get to play out these different people.
Even though, I've killed people.
Not while you were part of the person, I hope. But
well, somebody wakes up dead in this book.
That's right.
And I think a good thing too.
Well, because it's real. We will ignore that because it's going to take too long to find it. So the point of the book is that, but let's say I find it very relevant now with 2020 going on, with 2020 over, 2021. We seem to have a hangover from 2020, and we're learning. Technology helped, but we're learning what we miss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that we were both up at Jewish holidays, and I just wanted to cry half the time because I was able, even though we were social distancing and I had a mask on, I was there.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that was hard. One of the great things is having a whole bunch of people together, worshiping together. This other, the whole social distance thing, was that there were maybe 30 people inside and there was outside. It was a genius thing.
Right.
They carried it off. They had Zoom, and they had the Zoom in the room, and they had all of it. But it's not the same.
So this book you've written is so much about what happens when you're separated from what you're used to and who do you become. And I wonder if part of the message in your writing is, and of course this is because it's a Jewish notion for me, do we have choice? Can I walk out into the world and say, wow, things are really rough, and I can choose to have my Yetzer Hara, my good side, or my other side, show up and guide me, right? Yetzer Hara or Yetzer Tova. Is that part of what you're writing, is to have people think about that?
Oh, yeah.
And then how do you think your book, like having read your book, what about that would you hope I'd walk away with?
Life isn't easy.
I think once you said to me, If life was easy, they'd call it noodles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what? Life isn't easy
And within, I don't want to say there's absolute free choice, because there
Right.
isn't. But I know this sounds very trite.
Okay.
Bloom where you're planted,
Okay.
and given what you're given, you make something out of it. It always amazes me. I've had friends who were absolute bad luck people.
I know someone
They
like that.
start out and it doesn't get any better.
Right.
And they've made stunning lives out of nothing.
Right.
And other people who are born with all kinds of advantages waste them and make nothing out of them. And that's another, why is that? How is that? All of these are interesting questions that you could write things about.
Right. So I just want to hold this book up again. If you're watching on Facebook or if you're on Twitter, because you can watch us live there too. I just want you to see this title of this book, Jubilee Year, because I think it's so relevant right now. It explores those questions. We have a tragedy that happens, and all of the characters in the town play it out differently, and some to their best and some to their worst. And then at the end, here's the fascinating thing, people start to get out, one way or another. They get out. And at the very end, we realize that the people on the outside who were not having this experience of no technology, no electricity, no running, right, are jealous because they had dust.
Mm-hmm.
They had the red dust from the avalanche that settled on them forever. And
Yeah.
they're jealous because the people who had nothing, basically, right, they have to live off the land, they have to clear the river so that they don't have a flood, they have to work hard. I mean, they're back in time, basically. The people with the dust are jealous.
There's a beautiful moment in Mary Renault's The Last of the Wine,
Mm-hmm.
where the bull dancers come back from Crete,
Mm-hmm.
and they were taken right off the farm
Mm-hmm.
to go to Crete and become bull dancers. And they come back, and their families look at them. What's that outfit you're wearing? My God, with the pinched in waist and the, no, you don't understand. We were bull dancers. We were the only ones who escaped without deaths because of our leaders and because we trained together. No, you don't get, well, we're going to try and forget that.
Wow.
We'll forget that. And I mean, I hope you can get a husband looking the way you do. I hope. And I think part of that may be coming out of the illness that I did, where people say, forget that. Forget that. You don't understand where I've been and where I've come from.
And how that made me part of who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
There is a thing. I didn't invent it, I'm sure, but I've never heard it expressed before. I call it the Everest effect.
Okay.
And I think part of that is what happens to veterans when they get PTSD. Because the P is post.
Right.
While it's happening, you're doing what you do.
What you're doing.
You get back home, and you say, "I've climbed Everest.
Mm-hmm.
I've done this stuff you wouldn't believe, good and bad. I've fought with these people, with these guys who had my back. One of who saved my life twice. I saved this other guy's life twice. We were in the height of of ourselves physically, mentally, and every other way. I've climbed Everest, and what's at the top is everybody else walking around eating burgers and leaving paper on the floor and saying, get over it.
Get over it, right.
But you don't understand. We were bull dancers.
You don't understand.
You don't understand.
We lost everything.
We lost, but we made we changed the direction of a river.
Of a river to save ourselves.
To save ourselves.
Without machinery.
Without machinery. Using our mind and our brains and our hands, the whole town.
Came together to do this.
Yes, and you said, well,
forget all that.
Yeah.
So I hate to do this because this is amazing, but we just talked for an hour.
Oh.
And we're done. So if you've joined us, this has been the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, The Stream, with the amazing Joanne Greenberg, who is welcome back at any time.
Thank you.
To talk more. Please look up both books, actually, Jubilee Year, and I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. And join me in 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about Kabbalah, I think. I'm pretty sure that's who's coming on in 2 weeks. So we're going to do a mystical shift. So please join me for that shift to the magical side of what you might think is the magical side, which is actually a deep dive into Jewish philosophy. So thank you, and until next time, please stay well, stay curious, and stay inspired.